He is the right rev of speed, and his knowledge is incredible because here I am just chatting with him off there, and, you know, the changes that the drivers are making to their teams, and I know to some people that's basic stuff, but, you know, there's always a trade in baseball that you forget about, or there's always a draft choice. Not this guy, Jerry Bonkowski, the right rev of speed, NBCSports.com, motorsports writer, and he does a pretty good job with me here during the silly season as well. Well, you had been telling us it could be a dark horse all year long. It turns out to be the dark horse, Joey Logano. And boy, I mean, in some ways I hate it because it is what I told you about. Geez, if it's not going to be one of the big three, why do we run the regular season? But on the other hand, here in the playoffs, here's the underdog driver pushing the defending champ out of the way in Martinsville to clinch the spot, and then coming on strong in the final 20 laps to win the Ford EconoBoost 400. I guess the question I wanted, how did Logano do it at the end? Because everybody was saying when you were watching the race that, oh, this pit stop that Busch is making right now, Kyle Busch, that's going to win him the run. What was the key to Logano to come back?
Well, Todd Gordon and Logano's appreciated he should get it. And I think now, obviously, with the way Joey won the race and the championship, Todd Gordon's going to get that recognition finally. But, I mean, the biggest thing, Marky, that I think that that won for Logano, and there's really not been a lot of talk about it, was tire management. I mean, you know, when you have a place like Homestead, which is a mile and a half, and you start the race late in the afternoon under the sunlight, and then you go into the night, you know, one of the biggest, well, the two keys you have to worry about are fuel mileage and tire conservation. And, you know, Joey did an outstanding job, you know, with the mileage that he got out of the car, and then also the tire management. And, you know, when that final restart they had, and, you know, he just got past Kyle Busch, and that was it. He was gone at that point. And I think that you know, this will verify a lot of things about the champion in waiting. Well, he's not a champion in waiting anymore. He is a champion now.
I mean, we hear all the stories about sliced bread and Mark Martin and such, and it took 10 years, and maybe he almost lost his ride before he replaced Tony Stewart. We hear all those stories, but can Logano win multiple titles? Is this a guy that we can legitimately say the sport will be riding the back?
Well, I think that certainly he has the chance and the potential to be a multi-season champion. The key, though, is that, you know, Team Penske, they're a good operation, but I think that they would probably be the first one to say that there is definitely room for improvement. I mean, so when you look at a guy like Kevin Harvick or Kyle Busch winning 8 races this year each, and then Martin Truex Jr. won 4 races, and Joey Logano winning 3, and that the way it boiled down, I think that, you know, he did come on strong in the playoffs, which is what he did do. But I think that they have to get stronger during the regular season. I mean, they've got to be a little bit more dominating, a little bit more dominant, and I think that they can be. And, you know, this is kind of like when Brad Keselowski, his teammate, won in 2012. You know, the Kes, you know, everybody was saying that, you know, they got a great organization, great team, and then, you know, 2013, not so good. So I think that's the biggest thing that Logano has to guard against and Team Penske has to guard against is that, you know, they have to follow up what they did in 2018 with a stronger 2019.
One of the criticisms, I guess, about this format, Jerry Bonkowski, here we have the Super Bowl of the season. The other drivers just backed up. Now, I know Jimmy Johnson left, but you look at the final standings, and it's the final 4 drivers all finishing in the top 4 slots. There was a lot of talk about, well, the other guys, they'll just stay out of the way and all. I guess the question is was this really a competitive race, or was this 4 drivers and then trying to get around the rest of the field? I guess, you know, my question being, is this the best way to determine a champion? And having all those other cars on the track, maybe, you know, just going off to the side and letting the other 4 drivers have the day?
Well, let's look at it this way. I mean, you know, you had a guy who was not in the Final Four in the person of Kyle
Mm-hmm.
had an outstanding run early in the race, and then you had Denny Hamlin was up there for a while. You had Jimmy Johnson that was up there for a while. All these guys were not in the final four. But I will say this: current format back in what was it, 2014, I think it was.
Mm-hmm.
We have yet to have a champion that has not won the race at Homestead. We had every champion has won there since this format came into play, and I think that there may be some fallout from this. Laddie won. I think that it was. Again, I predicted him. If it wasn't Kyle Busch, I was going to go with Logano, and sure enough, he did do it. But you have to question two things about this. One, yes, he was the underdog, but how do you not keep a guy from winning the race and winning the championship? You can't do that, but it just seems very unusual or strange that for the last 5 years, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, that the champion has won it. I think if you look at it from that standpoint. And the other thing too is, here, I mean, over the next couple of weeks or so, will people talk about, well, here's Kyle Busch and Kevin Harvick and Matt Martin Truex Jr. who dominated, and they had nothing essentially to write home about after that checkered flag fell.
Yeah, that's one of the things. It seems to me almost like this, the team that finishes fifth in the conference wins the NCAA tournament. Or you have a circumstance. I guess like when the Cardinals won the World Series in 2006, even though they were barely 500, a feeling like that. Do you that well, he didn't have the regular season, the other three drivers did. Do you think he's a legitimate champ?
Oh yeah.
Okay.
I mean, he won the big race. He won the championship.
Under the format that we have here, yeah.
Under the format, exactly. But I will say this, and this has absolutely nothing to do with Joey Logano winning the championship. So I'm going to make sure I preface that. But I did find it very, very interesting that yesterday morning actually, Sunday morning before the championship race, NASCAR had brought out Jim France, who's now the sport of the sanctioning body rather, in light of Brian early, if not permanently. And Jim said that, and also Steve Phelps, the new president of NASCAR, both said that, they're open to any suggestions on how to change the sport for 2020. Not 2019, but for 2000. Excuse me, 2000.
Bless you.
Everything is on the table. Everything's on the table. They're talking about having more short tracks. We talked about that, last word was Sunday. You and I talked about.
Yeah.
They're talking about more road courses, races. They're talking about less mile-and-a-half, pretty much anything. And I think that, we could be seeing perhaps in NASCAR history if indeed they live up to what they're asking for. I mean, if fans really start saying, we want to see this, this, and this, well, then it becomes, it behooves NASCAR to listen to the fans and go forward with that.
It's intriguing, and I mean, we mentioned, okay, what short tracks are out there that could use? Darlington, wouldn't it be great if we had that? I drove by North Wilkesboro. I don't think they're going back there, but I drove by that track a couple of times this weekend, as a matter of fact. I know that they're trying to get that up for some smaller races, and we've talked about that, but let's talk now. There's a lot of changes, and we've talked about Martin Truex. Yeah.
Not to interrupt you, but you've got to have, if you're a NASCAR fan, if you want to listen to your fans, number one on my list, without question, you have to have Bristol in the playoffs. No ifs, ands, or buts about it.
Intriguing.
Yeah, the August night race, the Saturday night race, that's always been a staple, but they can certainly make that a September night race very easily. And, Bristol belongs in the playoffs. Do you really want to get the fans excited? Bristol needs to be in the playoffs, baby.
Yeah. Or for that matter, I mean, I know that Darrell Waltrip, I grew up watching him talk about his love when he went from car to announcer of Bristol. Of course, he had so much success there. Always found it intriguing that Michael was the, speedway driver, but it was Darrell who was so good on the short tracks and such. In terms of, I mean, we know that there are so many guys that are to start with new Kurt Busch, Matt Kenseth, Daniel Suarez, A.J. Allmendinger, Regan Smith, Jamie McMurray among the drivers to start next season with new teams and such. I guess, what do you think in this offseason? What are some of the surprises and the storylines that we ought to be able to look for?
Well, I think number one, there's got some among the guys you mentioned. I don't think Kent's coming back, and I don't think McMurray's coming back. I think that McMurray, from what offered a front office job with Chip Ganassi Racing. I mean, I know he's a racer. I know he wants to be racing, but this is a situation that would be very good for him. And as far as Kent, he has nothing. Allmendinger has nothing. I mean, I'm actually not going to be surprised if Allmendinger winds up either in the sports car ranks in IMSA or if he goes back to IndyCar. I think AJ's not going to be coming back to NASCAR. That's just my personal opinion. So, we're going to see a very significant change next year. We're going to have, let's see, by my count, I think we're going to have 5 new drivers on the circuit, full time. You've got, we don't know where Suarez is going to wind up at. I mean, he could maybe not even stay in NASCAR. He could go somewhere else as well, too. So, and, guys like Newman, he's going to Roush. That'll be great to see him there. Where Kurt Busch winds up at, everybody's saying he's a lock to go to Ganassi to replace Jamie McMurray. So, we're going to, you're going to need, as the old saying goes, you're going to need a scorecard to tell the players next year for sure where they're at.
There's no, you would think that I'm into conspiracy theories if you thought that final caution that Daniel Suarez, the fact that he might be in or looks like he's going to be in the same team with Kyle Busch, that was actually just a ploy so that they'd all pit and have the fresh cars and that Busch could go and lead the last 20 laps. Didn't work out that way, but that's what people thought was going to happen. Yeah. Dang, I said I thought I could be Alex Jones here. I thought I could get this conspiracy theory going. And, there are plenty of them. I mean, let's face it. By the way, one last thing. This was the Ford EconoBoost 400. And I got to tell you, I was a little I was saying, how did Chevy and Toyota let Ford sponsor the Super Bowl? You know what I'm asking? Yeah.
They've been doing it for what? It's been since like 2002, I think it's been, or 3, whatever it's been. So, frankly, there's won the championship than the Ford. So, if you're a Ford fan and if you're a Joey Logano fan, you're obviously really, really happy right now because that kind of ends a little bit of a Ford drought, if you will, to the championship. I mean, remember, Jimmy Johnson won 7 championships in a Chevy. You've got Keselowski won it in a Dodge. It's been a while since a Ford guy has won. It's good to see them finally winning, and I think this could be a good thing for Ford going forward. They may go back to their. This is a good thing for them, I think.
Well, considering how Chevy's, at least in the Cup Series, maybe not some of the other sections, but Chevy, I know, struggled except on the road courses, possibly Daytona, because, but, we talked about that. But going from the Mustang to the Mustang from the Fusion next year, I'm really excited to see how that handles, so we'll see what goes on next year. But yeah, I did think it was appropriate that a Ford would win the Ford EconoBoost 400. And had Truex been able to win the race, let's say, in his Toyota, it's something wrong with the sponsorship there, even though it's happened many times before. Well, Jerry, it's always great to talk to you. I keep, and we have your number, and so when there's off-season stories, I'll be calling you up.
Talking to you, Marky. I look forward to talking more during the off-season.
Speed, read them, NBCSports.com, all motorsports. I mean, we're going to talk hot rods, IndyCar, and yeah, he knows NASCAR as well and does it on a competing radio entity that, well, you got to pay to listen. You get the idea of what it is. Tri-City Sports Now coming back. Larry Irvin, the Chicago State coach. You might want to check in on that. They're playing ETSU tonight. Tri-City Sports Now coming back after this. And I wish